Hello, and welcome to another episode of Solipsist Watched, where this week I watched Good Will Hunting from 1997. This is a movie that I feel like everyone has seen, or everybody who likes movies a little bit has seen. And somehow it has continued to skirt my attention for a long time. It's been on my list for forever. No surprise there. It's a very well-regarded film, very popular for a whole bunch of reasons. And yet, it's one of those that was always sort of just nebulous enough in terms of why people liked it or that sort of thing that it never drew my attention. I never saw it on my list and went, yeah, I definitely want to watch that. But I randomly happened to stumble upon a clip recently of an interview with Matt Damon. I think it was an old interview though, where he was talking about how it's set in Boston and they got an R rating on it because of how much they swear in it. And it brought me back to thinking about it, and I said, okay, time to finally watch this. So if you told me, not knowing anything about the movie, that Ben Affleck and Matt Damon wrote a movie in the 90s about dealing with trauma and developing positive relationships and having a nuanced take on masculinity and the toxicity therein, and grappling with societal pressure, I think I would have laughed at you, because that's not what I expected out of this film. Most of the clips that circulate or scenes that people talk about are fairly presented fairly in a vacuum, and I don't know if I certainly wasn't ever able to put together what this film was really about, other than that it had some good performances from some good actors in it. And so I was very pleasantly surprised, and definitely understand now why this is such a well-regarded film. I did not expect that this was written by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, and I apologize if they are known for better things than I know them for. I don't think either of them are horrible actors. I think both of them fall into that camp that I often talk about of not playing particularly nuanced roles, that they usually play some variant of themselves. But in past, I have often thought that the few occasions where I have seen both of them play Bostonian characters and lean a little bit more into that sort of area that they grew up, are often their best performances. And frankly, not having seen both of them in a little while, I've seen Batfleck, but that's a whole other thing. That's horrible. I can't even blame him for that. Having not seen either of them very much in a while, although we've also seen Matt Damon in a few things. I generally regard him better than Affleck. Anyway, I can't even get through the sentence without a freaking tangent. Having not seen either of them in a while, I genuinely tend to regard them in that camp of playing kind of variations on one character. But I think these might be some of their best performances, if not their best performances ever. They are fairly understated, I should say. And these are roles that they seem quite comfortable in. I think part of that is just natural. They're probably versions of people that they grew up around, that sort of thing. And, the accent is natural because it's people that again, they grew up around that kind of thing. But that they perform with so much better nuanced kind of expression, subtle acting things, and all these little things, and written with a really good script that I am very impressed with their acting and as well with their writing, which apparently I I think there have been a lot of jokes over the years that this had ghostwriting and stuff like that, but by all accounts, everybody who's ever been involved with it has always said, nope, it was the two of them. They rewrote it after. But this was originally, I think, Matt Damon's like student script when he was studying in college, and then he with Affleck rewrote it later for a few years later for purchase. So for very young writers and very young actors, incredibly impressive, because I think largely this is some incredibly well-written dialogue. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's very, very good and a damn sight better than a lot of what is written these days. I think performances across the board are really, really good. There's some great casting here. I think, as I said, Affleck and Damon put on great performances. Apparently they wanted, there's a note here that they wanted, the casting directors wanted to get Leonardo DiCaprio and who was the other one? The other one who was also, they were side by side in the Tarantino movie I haven't watched. The other one. And I think DiCaprio would have been fine, probably, actually, because having seen him in The Departed, he probably could have filled that role. But why can't I remember his name? Dated Jennifer Aniston. Why is that the thing I remember? Anyway, I don't think it would have been the same. Of course, this is also very well known for being one of Robin Williams' most incredible performances. Not that he had really any bad ones that I can think of. This is a very, very good performance as a supporting actor. And I think it is easy to gloss over some of the other performances that are really good. Across the board, there are some very good performances, but I think Stellan Skarsgård does a very good job. He's actually he's on screen as much as Robin Williams is, I think, or near to it. And same with Minnie Driver, who I like quite a lot. She's in some of my favorite movies, but really, I don't know that she has a huge number of credits, especially in movies. But anyway, she was sort of a bigger fixture in the 90s. Yeah, so acting across the board is really very good and supported by a very well written, very believable dialogue. Narratively, the arc of the movie is also pretty strong. This is where I start to get into some of the places I have some issues with it a little bit. I think it suffers from some pacing issues, especially towards the last third of the movie. It has little bumps in the road where it sort of is trying to speed to its ending and maybe overplays certain scenes in order to get to where it needs to be. I also have some issues with the pacing and the noting of the passage of time, because sometimes it's hard to tell if it's been 1 day or 1 week or months between scenes. There are some implied elements that give you hints, but I think there are certain scenes that could have been given a little bit more help, just getting the audience to understand that a certain amount of time has passed and a certain developments that may have happened as a result of that. But overall, I think this has some fantastic writing when it comes to the narrative between characters. Just across the board, really, really good. I think most of all, I appreciate this. This tackles a surprising number. Okay, before we get into the thing that I love most about it, this tackles a surprising number of really difficult topics, and it does so with a finesse and a light hand that is very admirable. I think it does this in two ways. One, by keeping the tone fairly light throughout. There's a lot to laugh at. Some that is directly jokes. Some of it that is not supposed to be, or not directly funny, but is indirectly funny through the absurdity of situations or the way things are shot or presented, that sort of thing. And so it's a fairly humorous movie, but it's also fairly heavy in a lot of ways. And it is careful to not shy away from saying what it wants to say about some very troubling topics, but also not linger on them too much, not let scenes that are heavy and not humorous at all play too long or drag the rest of the next scene down. It has a very good sort of ripple going between comedic and dramatic. And it is always very, very earnest with its emotions. And I think that gets to the place that I think this is most extraordinary. And it got me thinking a lot, both as I was watching it and after the fact. Because this movie tackles sort of the subjects of post-traumatic stress and suffering from the aftermath of abuse and other difficult experiences that put people in bad places, and the way that that can go on to affect so many other things in your life. Ultimately, a lot of the movie is directly about unpacking those things and those experiences, but keeps it on, again, a light enough edge where it's not, it doesn't ever feel like it's pulling at your heartstrings about it. But at the same time, it does this wonderful juxtaposition between all of these characters and the worlds that they live in, and the differences in their experiences, to show a sort of universality between lots of different people coming from different perspectives, that ultimately lots of people go through suffering from a lot of different things, and it is very hard, regardless of who you are or regardless of what you've gone through, to sometimes recognize and then unpack the things that have happened and how they're affecting you in your day-to-day life. I think in particular as well, and this is the part that I think is most extraordinary, mostly because of its rarity, is showing a lot of earnest exchanges of emotion between masculine characters that are earnest and not shied away from. I think this is an issue not just in movies, but in society in general. I won't get on a soapbox too long, but there is a very significant issue. I don't think anyone will take too much surprise from this in our culture in general and beyond, about how men relate to each other and how they approach their own emotions and how they share or fail to share those emotions and how they interact with other men, and hide their, see those things, see emotions as things they can't, or shouldn't, or should be embarrassed to have and share. And that's something just in normal life, but it's also, I think, incredibly rare in movies. It got me thinking a little bit about the Bechdel test, which is, you're probably familiar with it. It's a test for media it's basically like, to pass the Bechdel test, a piece of media has to have two women that talk to each other about something other than a man. It's not a great test. It's sort of, there's a joke, it was never meant to be a real test. It's a comic. But anyway, it got me thinking about that, because I think that's a great concept. That's a great concept for a lot of different ways of digging into your media and what that media says about the culture that it comes from. And I think this is another example about it. I don't know that there may be a variant that is like this already, but it got me thinking about like how many movies pass the test of two men having an earnest conversation between each other, expressing their emotions directly in a way that isn't like about a woman or about a business transaction or about violence. Was like, that's sort of like what just came off the top of my head, because that is most conversations in most movies. That's just sort of the way things are. And I was trying to think about, watching this film, how many movies I've watched on this channel or I've watched in general that have more than maybe one scene where two male characters express direct emotions to each other, and express direct emotions to each other at all, let alone how many of those are then actually earnest and vulnerable moments of emotion that are not played as a joke or used as a piece of leverage later, because that's also a common thing. Like, it's treated as a vulnerability that's then exploited. And so that got me thinking a lot about that. I don't really have an idea to cap that thought off, but I just want to throw it out into the world. And if you've got a thought on that, or you can, you have a reference point for that, or you want to just think about the movies that you've seen and how they present, male relationships and male vulnerability, I'd love to hear if you have a thought about that. But that's like the number one for me as I was watching it, of just, there's some actual, like, this is extremely well done. And that happens it's multiple characters. It's not just two characters. It's not just Robin Williams and Matt Damon's characters. There's a bunch of different characters that have pretty earnest exchanges, and they come in various flavors, but I thought that was really interesting. As far as the direction and the cinematography, I think it's pretty good across the board. I really like how much of this movie is shot in darkness or semi-darkness, and the use of the natural diegetic lighting to paint interesting pictures. It's not all extraordinary. Some of it is fairly standard, but lighting in general, I think, tends to be fairly natural. This is directed by Gus Van Sant, who I think the only thing I've seen that he's directed is Milk, but I know I've heard his name a bunch of times, so maybe there's some TV or something he's done. And I'm very pleased with the cinematography overall. I think it works really well, and paints some really nice pictures, and does some just nice composition in otherwise pedestrian shots that catch the eye in a nice way. As far as, let's see, that's most of it. I do want to note the music. It's not fair of me to judge this entirely in current year, because, well, I guess Danny Elfman had quite a career prior to this and would go on to have quite a career after. But he became more prolific after this movie. And the moment this movie starts and Danny Elfman's score starts playing, man, is it the most Danny Elfman score I've ever heard. Just the woodwinds and flutes coming in droves, and a bunch of other, motifs and things that he commonly uses. It just immediately stuck out to me. I just happened to know his particular work quite a lot. To me, he sticks out almost as much as what's his name? I can't remember now. The Star Wars guy, the Star Wars and ET guy. I'm gonna kick myself for that one. Who has a very recognizable style, and I think there are a few other composers in Hollywood who are very prolific, who I recognize their styles as well. But this is a very Danny Elfman score. That said, the parts that are not done by Danny Elfman, especially the licensed or even original music by some other artists, is put to very good use. I like it quite a lot. But I can't help but hear Danny Elfman whenever he chimes in, even if it's just for a little, lilting thing in the background and, for a few seconds type of stuff. I always hear it. So that's just a personal bee in my bonnet, but it's not really fair. I can't totally blame that just for existing. Overall, I really was pleased by this, like more so than I thought I would be. It has a huge amount of nuance, and while it's not trying to be some incredibly deep digging, morality psychological tale about trying to say more than its story should. It knows where to dig a little bit, and it knows where not to. It knows where to put that emotional vulnerability without overplaying it, and it knows how to use everything it wants to do very effectively. It balances a lot of different storylines all at once in a very pleasant way, and delivers it through some great lines delivered by some great actors. I'm definitely gonna have to rewatch this at least once, a few times probably, if it doesn't end up on my like short list of I'll rewatch this many times, because I really think it's a fantastic film, and I recognize now why so many people give it so much credit. Yeah, it's just pretty great. Anyway, thank you guys for watching another episode of Solipsist Watched. I'll see you guys next time.